Okay, Endocrine Lab. Our very first picture was this one because I want you to know how to spell the word endocrine. There it is. Endocrine. Crine must mean something, and endo means within. So you may remember there were also glands from AMP1 called exocrine glands. And we'll mention that as well because one of our glands that we do, probably next week, will be both endocrine and exocrine. But today, and with this whole chapter, our focus is endocrine glands. And so what are endocrine glands? The easiest thing I can say is they are glands that secrete chemicals called what? Anybody know?
Hormones.
Very good. Hormones. Endocrine glands make hormones. So today and next time, and what we will be doing is we will be looking at the endocrine glands and talking about the hormones they produce. And so I gave you the sheet. And the sheet, notice how the sheet is arranged. I'm going to go back and forth between the lights today. So we start off with a gland, and we kind of grayscaled it here. So everything under this is the pituitary gland. Remember, I'm going to repeat and come back. I'm not trying to teach all this straight off the page right now. I'm orienting you to the handout. And the pituitary gland happens to be a gland that has two different major areas or two different parts. We usually refer to those parts as regions, and I will remind you of that. The one region is called anterior. Anybody remember what anterior means? Front, yeah, front. And the other part of the pituitary is called the posterior. So what does that mean? The back. So when we see the pituitary gland, which we'll see in a minute, but because I just mentioned it, I want to show it to you. Here it is. There's one side and there's the other. So one is anterior and one is posterior. And I'm going to teach you how to know the difference, okay? And so what I would say is, because I didn't mention this, I will always, when I get to something that's really picture worthy and I'm marking it up, I'll let you know. So that way you guys don't have to be, oh, did I miss something? So right now I'm just orienting you. When we start marking this up, before I turn the page, I'll let you guys know, okay, now's the time you want to get a picture of this. I've marked it up for your records. That way, because also sometimes I'm going to stay on one picture for maybe 20 minutes marking it up, and you don't need a picture of every step, just the final product for your study purposes. So let's go back to this picture. So what we're going to do first is we are going to learn the glands, see where they're at, know their name, and for some of them, learn a name of the hormone. So as we go back, and I'm going to use this sheet and this, notice here, anterior pituitary has a bunch of hormones. That's the worst one. That's the most hormones we're going to have to learn for any of them. We put it first, okay? Look at the posterior. How many do you see associated with the posterior there?
Sure.
Yeah, I see 2. How many do you see with the anterior? Good count. 6. So usually I won't say that, but for this first one, because there's so many that come from the anterior, it's a good idea in your mind to just know, oh, the anterior pituitary has 6 hormones. Because, you know, if you have a list of so many things and you don't have that number locked in your head and you're trying to remember, you're like, oh, the anterior pituitary, what came from there? It was growth hormone and thyroid stimulating, and you get the list and then you go, was there another one? I don't remember how many there were. So for it, I tell you 6 because it helps your memory. And so this is how the handout's made. You'll see a gland. If there's any regions, it'll be under there. And then the hormones that are associated with that region are right under it. And that'll keep going throughout the thing. Here's a thyroid, has a couple different parts, and it has hormones associated with each one. And we'll just keep doing that. And you're going to love it when we get to stuff like this. There's no region. It's just one hormone, one gland. That's always nice. And I'll teach you more about that sheet as we go through these. So let's learn our first few glands for today. Hey, what generalized body area would you say we're looking at? I couldn't hear. Okay, what fancy word did you use for this cavity in AMP1? Abdomen, abdominal. Yeah, so we're looking in the abdomen or the abdominal region. And technically, when we get to some of these, we're going to find out they're behind the abdomen. There's a membrane where all your guts are, and these things sit behind those. But for now, no big deal. I know you guys know what that is. What is that? Kidney. Yeah. Red beans. Ready to go with some rice or get mashed up. There's another one over there. I'm not going to label both sides. It's pretty plainly clear. Okay? So here's how we're going to do this. I want to give you a little bit about the kidney, but not everything right now, because we learned in little chunks, bits and pieces. So the first thing I want you to do is take your sheet. That's why I gave it to you. We need to know which side's the front and which side's the back. So I'll tell you, the side that has the kidney at the bottom, that's page 2. So what I commonly have people do is just, hey, write a 2 up there so you know that that's page 2. And because as we work with this handout over the next few days, I want to help you find it quick, so I'll say, oh, it's the middle of page 2. And you don't have to go, which page? There's not marked. So you can mark page 1 if you want to see the 1 up there, but you know, that's that. So look on page 2 at the bottom and tell me, you got to be brave here because pronunciation is tough. What's the name of the hormone that the kidney produces? Very good. Erythropoietin. Erythropoietin. Now, why did I abbreviate that? Here's why. Sometimes when I mark it up for you, I'll abbreviate. Sometimes I'll write long. It just depends. But I know this, that when you look at your picture later and you see kidney and you see EPO, the EPO is a memory device to help your brain think, oh, what's EPO stand for? Erythropoietin. So actually by me using abbreviations for you, it helps give you a platform to learn even while you're looking at the pictures and to help you think about things. Now you probably know this, but I want to make sure. Lab tests, almost never is an abbreviation full credit answer, okay? We want to know the names of these hormones. They all have abbreviations, but that abbreviation, if I ask you what the kidney makes and you put EPO, if it's a 4-point question, you'll probably get 1 point of credit for EPO, okay? Just be aware of that going in. We want to know the names, not just the abbreviation, okay? Now, the cool thing about erythropoietin is you may have touched upon this in AMP1. Here's why. Because in AMP1, you learn that all blood cells are made where? Anybody remember? Where? The bone marrow. All blood cells are made in the bone marrow. So check out your handout again. Do you see where it says the target of EPO, erythropoietin, is the bone marrow? Cool. So here's what that means. Check this out. So in this chapter, I'm going to write that a lot. What were the chemicals called that are produced by these glands? So when I write a big H, it stands for hormone. Okay? So we need to know that the kidney makes a hormone. Okay? It produces one. Its name is EPO. Here's the cool thing. All hormones do this. And I'm going to spell it the easy way. They travel through the blood. That's what hormones do. They travel through the blood. Does anybody know, where does your blood go? So the reality is not that, and I'll say it so everybody can hear, but I'm just going to say everywhere. It's not everywhere. You have a few tissues, and you may remember from AMP1, cartilage has no blood supply. A couple of tissue types and a couple areas where you don't have blood, but almost everywhere has blood. In has a blood supply going to it so that it can live, because it needs oxygen and nutrients. We'll talk about cartilage later. So here's what I say. Hormones travel through the blood, and your blood goes everywhere. Sorry about that. I ran out of room. But that is where? Everywhere. And eventually, they're going to find, as they're coursing through the blood, I'm going to draw this a bunch of times. I drew it real quick. You're like, what in the world? I want you to think of the capillary. So there's the cut edge, and that I kind of curve it to represent a blood vessel, like that. And I want to remind you of something from AMP1 that you may not remember. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels. They're tiny, and I know you talked about them when you did tissue types, because capillaries are one of the tissues that is the thinnest in the body. It's only one layer of cells, and those cells are flat. Does anybody remember what we call that tissue? I'll start writing. Call it out if you remember. There you go. So a capillary is simple squamous epithelium. That means one layer of flat cells. Okay. So why is that important? Change the color. We're going to do a little triangle to represent a hormone. Hormones get in the blood. And when they're in the blood, they're just traveling. They're not doing anything. But because a capillary is one cell layer thick, a hormone can move out into the tissues. And now we get a hormone that was traveling through the blood, and it's out in the tissue somewhere. Well, why? And so I need room to write, so I'm going to put it up here. There's the hormone. Oops. I made it through the whole day yesterday, and the pen didn't do a rogue mark at all. It was amazing. So, oh well, we're not so lucky. So this is our hormone, and it's out in the tissues of the body somewhere because it left the capillary. So here's the idea. Why is it there? It's looking for something. Here's what it's looking for. And you've probably heard of those before. A receptor is a little molecule that could be on the outside of the cell, maybe it's somewhere else, but for right now, we're just going to look at it this way. So it's a little, it is perfectly designed where that hormone can come in, and because of its shape, boom, it can bind to it. And so here's where I'm going with this. This cell is now called the target, or we could say the target cell, because that is the cell that the hormone will impact or will do something to that cell. So remember, I'm using this first hormone just as a build this concept. So let me ask you. I'll roam around when I say this because it'll be fun. Where do hormones travel? Well, first off, through the
Capillary.
blood. First they travel through the blood, right? Where's your blood go? It goes everywhere. Wait, remind me. Where do hormones travel? Through the
Blood.
and the blood goes everywhere. And when that blood's going everywhere and that hormone's in the blood, it's going to leave and look for something. What's it looking for?
A receptor.
Receptors. And what are those receptors on?
Tissues.
They're on cells called target cells. So let's do that again. Are you ready? What system are we talking about? The endocrine system. And the endocrine system is a network. This is the part I didn't tell you yet. A network of these organs. What do we call the kidney and the pancreas and what do we call them? Like if I say the pituitary is a blank, what would you call it? It's a gland, right? The pituitary is a gland. The adrenal is a gland. The pancreas is a gland. When we're in this system, the organs are called glands. Okay, the organs in this system are called glands. Please don't be confused if you're taking the test and you don't see the word gland, it says organ. Because the organs are the glands. Okay? So let me say it again. We'll start over. The endocrine system is a network of glands. Okay? This much, actually I'll never do this like this again. This is the one thing that I want you to have this written down because it really helps lock it in. If you already know it, you don't need to write it down, but it helps you to hear this. The endocrine system is a network of what? Glands. A network of glands. And those glands, they make chemicals called what?
Hormones.
Hormones. So first off, a network of what?
Glands.
Glands. Makes chemicals called?
Hormones.
Hormones. A network of what?
Glands.
Glands. And the chemicals are called?
Hormones.
Hormones. Next part is this. That travel through the blood. That travel through the blood. So we got a network of glands. We got chemicals called hormones. And those hormones travel through what?
The blood.
Through the blood. They travel through the blood. And remind me, where should blood go?
Everywhere.
Everywhere, right? It's virtually everywhere, but we can say everywhere. So it goes everywhere. So network of glands, chemicals called
Hormones.
hormones, travel through the
Blood.
blood, goes
Everywhere.
looking for what? What are those hormones looking for?
Targets.
Receptors. I know it's crazy. And those receptors are on what kind of cells?
Targets.
Target cells. See, for every single hormone that we do, that's how it works. The gland releases it, it gets in the blood, and it goes everywhere. And eventually it's going to hit a capillary, and it's going to leave. It might be a capillary in the brain. It might be in the big toe. It might be in the elbow. It doesn't matter. It might be in the stomach. It's going to be released, and it's going to travel through the tissues. And it's going to bounce around randomly until it meets up with a receptor to lock into. What if there's no receptor there? Then nothing happens. The hormone eventually finds its way back to the blood. No big deal. It's really cool like that. Okay? So, endocrine system is a network of what kind of things? Glands. And those glands make chemicals. What do we call those?
Hormones.
Hormones. And where do all hormones travel? Through the blood, right? They travel through the blood. So look what you've already learned. It's silly. It's this little saying, but you just learned a lot. You learned that we can call all of these organs glands, and that they're endocrine glands because they make what kind of chemicals? Hormones. And these chemicals are hormones, and hormones must travel through what? They travel through the blood. And your blood goes just about where?
Everywhere.
Just about everywhere. And the whole purpose is it's using the blood to get somewhere. It may go the wrong place at first. That's okay, because nothing can happen until we have a receptor on what kind of cell? Target cell. So now look at your handout and tell me, what's the target for EPO? Bone marrow. Hey, what's made in your bone marrow?
All the cells. RBC.
All the blood cells, but for us right now, specifically, EPO really does one thing. It hits the bone marrow and tells the bone marrow, make more red blood cells. That's what that fancy phrase, how do we phrase it, increases production of RBCs. It means it tells the bone marrow to make more red cells. Not the other kinds, just the red ones. Anybody remember what do red blood cells do? Carry oxygen. So the kidney makes a hormone that causes you to make more cells to carry more oxygen. It's all about oxygen. Wow. How crazy is that? The kidney is controlling oxygen in some way. You thought it was just about pee. I know you did. Okay? And it's about oxygen too. It's pretty cool. The kidneys are amazing. So the kidneys, we could say, most of the time we say they're urinary, but they're also endocrine. A lot of our endocrine glands are part of another system because they do more than one thing. Okay? So I took a long time with this hormone so I could teach you a big concept too. We just learned something very important. When we do the pituitary, I can't even say it now, and I name its hormones, guess where they travel? Through the blood. And where's the blood still go? Everywhere. So all these other hormones we're going to do follow the same pattern. They leave a capillary and go out into the tissues, out into the body somewhere. And what are they looking for? Receptors on target cells. So wherever, and this is cool on the handout, here's what I want you to do. The target, where it says target, you should probably write the word receptor there, because the target is where the receptors are. The target is where the receptors are. Isn't that cool? So this is one of the hard things about endocrine at first. People come in and say, oh, the hormones get in the blood and they go everywhere. Well, they don't usually say that. What they usually do is this. Oh, EPO goes to the bone marrow. It doesn't go to the bone marrow. It goes everywhere. What's special about the bone marrow?
It makes red blood cells.
But what does it have to have so that it can react with this hormone?
The hormone. Oh.
So everywhere, that's where I'm going again. Whatever you see as a target, that's where the receptors are. Okay, that's where the receptors are. So check out this cool concept. Go to page 1. Go to the first hormone. It says growth hormone. Take a while. Guess what growth hormone makes you do? Maybe grow. That would be acceptable on our first lab tests. Okay, just telling you, that would be acceptable. We'll come back to that though. What do you think it means when it says the target's generalized? Cells all over the body. So you don't have to write the word. If you're asked about the target for growth, you don't have to say generalized. You can say cells all over the body, right? Pretty much everywhere. I mean, we do a lot of that. There's not a lot of absolutes, not a lot of alwayses and nevers, but anyway. So that's pretty cool because it helps you see this handout in a different way. You know that every hormone travels everywhere through the blood, but that middle column tells you where the receptors are. And anytime it says generalized, it means that that hormone affects lots of tissues in the body, most body tissues, okay? But some of our hormones only affect certain tissue. And that's neat to know. There's a lot of hormones we're going to be learning about, a lot of stuff here. So we want to have the big picture as well as the details. So I think that's probably a good first picture to get right there. And then I'm going to delete all the extra stuff, all the words that I wrote, and come back to it. And we're just going to have kidney and EPO. And then we're going to add the other two glands that we see there. Okay? And by the way, you're going to notice that I take the pictures too. But I don't do that because I'm too close. So I get the picture here. Sorry, you're going to be in some of my pictures if I miss. All right. All right. That's why you picked that spot, huh? Oh, you want it back? Read too slow? Watch this. Here's the beauty of technology. Bam!
Yes.
Isn't it great? Oh, tip. Turn it landscape because it fits the screen, right? And the resolution's better that way than it is this way. So it's just better for you when you study later. I know if you're making a TikTok video or Snap, you're doing it this way. Oh, look what else I can do. One at a time. Let's not. It's easier for me to rewrite kidney and EPO. Oh, remind me, what's that called?
Kidney.
And what's its hormone called?
Erythropoietin.
There you go. Look. ERYTHRO.
P-O-I.
Red. Exactly. Good job, Dr. Day.
I'm sorry.
We're this. Yeah, exactly. I love it. Erythro. What's that mean? So it means red cell and it's in the blood. Oh, so watch this. Right. Poietin means producer. So this is a red cell producer. That's what the name erythropoietin means. It's telling you it produces erythrocytes, red blood cells. And by the way, I'm okay with you saying red blood cells or erythrocytes. If you're ever asked what those are on the test, you can say, oh, it increases erythrocytes if you want to be fancy, but you can say it increases red blood cells. Okay? All right. So there you see the big word. You all have that in your notes because I want to abbreviate for our official picture. If you want a picture of that, you're welcome to get it. Okay? So what I'm going to do now, kind of quicker, see, some of the glands will take more time because we're building big concepts and stuff, and other ones we can just name real quick. So let's do that. I'll make it blue. Does anybody know what this one is? Very good. Yeah, kind of right. It's got a head and a tail. Isn't that crazy? The pancreas. I bet you know one of the hormones that it makes already that is sometimes a problem with diabetes. Very good. Now go ahead and look at your handout because I want you to see that insulin's not the only hormone. The pancreas should be on page 2, somewhere in the middle of the page. Yeah, and so it's got a really crazy, the other word I'm not going to put up there because we're going to take some time to learn about that later. It's called glucagon. Glucagon. So insulin and glucagon happen to do different things, and we'll talk about that at some point. It's really cool. We have a few times where hormones do exactly the opposite of one another, and we'll talk about those. And I'll give you a tip for remembering things that are opposites because it's actually real easy, But we haven't been taught to do that, so we don't do it the easy way. We do it the hard way, usually. See these little things? They are sitting right on top of what? Good, right on top of the kidney. And I don't know if you know this, but that word refers to the urinary system and the kidneys. And since they're on top of the kidneys, they say they're adrenal upon the kidneys. They're adrenal. So we call them adrenal glands. Adrenal glands. And I know I'm going to want to teach you this later, so I'm going to give you something else about an adrenal. I'm going to draw a little rogue adrenal gland over here. And in the middle, I'm going to put an M. We'll come back to that. But the part that I want you to understand, because I know you had this on the brain as well, when you have an organ that has an outer part and an inner part, and they're two different regions, they very commonly call the outer portion a cortex. So the adrenal cortex is all around here, and in the middle, we'll talk about later. I'll tell you the word, but I don't need it up there on your picture. It's medulla. We're going to spend time talking about the medulla as well. But for right now, and what we're doing today, I want you to know the outer portion of the adrenal gland is different from the inside, and the outer part is called a cortex, okay? Because it'll be relevant to something we do in a little bit. So there's your picture of these three glands. If you already have it, I'm about to leave the screen. That's okay, but if you don't have it, get it now. Because now we're going to go down. We're going to do two other ones real quick and easy. Then we'll go up and do the ones that are higher up. So this area. If you're shy, you're going into healthcare, so you better not be shy. You can be shy. It's okay. There's something weird that happens when you're in a professional situation, no matter what your personal personality is. And if you're meant to be in healthcare, you'll have this ability to switch on professional versus personal and be a different person when you're in that mode, okay? This is obviously a reproductive system. They're showing male on one side and female on another. This is not a real person, it's a drawing. They're showing you this because what things are we talking about in this chapter? Oh, endocrine things. And we call those organs in the endocrine system, we call them glands, right? And what do they make? Hormones. So that means something in that picture must make some hormones. Where do hormones travel? Through the blood. Where's your blood go? There you go. So it travels through the blood, but your blood goes everywhere. All right? And what are those hormones looking for when they leave the blood? Receptors that are on target cells. So when we're doing this today, we're concerned with the glands that are making hormones. That would be that one there and that one there. Let me get, I thought I already had it, but I didn't. Anybody want to take a wild guess what that's called?
Ovary.
Very good. So I'll just do plural. And what is this?
Testicle.
Funny thing. How do you say one ovary? Ovary. How do you say one of the testes? Test what?
Testicle.
So the world has taught us wrong. There is no such thing as one testy. You may have, you know a lot of common names for these things. I know you do. But you'll hear people trying to be professional and they'll say, oh, a testy or something like that. That ain't even a word. Singular is testis. You're never going to have to use that for me. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. It would end with, this would be an I. Testis is 1, testes are 2. No big deal. When we go through A&P in 8 weeks, the last thing we're worried about is singular versus plural. But I just wanted you to hear that because it's kind of odd, okay? And also what's odd, this word. We say testes, but look how else you could say it. Testes. You heard, hey, those are the testes. No, they're the testes. Enough silliness. Why aren't we talking about the penis or the vagina?
It doesn't produce.
Oh, they're not producing hormones that course through the whole body and go everywhere. That's why, because this isn't about reproductive, this is about endocrine. And by the way, these 2 glands are the most important reproductive organs because they make the sperm and the egg also. Not only do they make the hormones, they also make the sperm and the egg. And we'll talk about that later. But it's really cool. No matter how you look at it, penis and vagina aren't the most important. It's the ovaries and the testes because they make the sperm and the egg and they make the hormones. And if you don't have the proper hormones, your body's going to be all out of whack. Not just your reproductive system, lots of systems, in fact. If you need the picture, snag it. That's all we're putting here. Until now. You tell me. What's the major female reproductive hormone? Bet you heard of it.
Estrogen.
And there's a number 2 important one. Most birth control pills are based on. There you go. So there's the top 2 female reproductive hormones. Here's the male one. Well, that looks familiar. Look at how they end. Oh. You know what it's telling? They are. It's telling you these are steroids. Even estrogen. Look, it has a word scramble for stare. It's got all jumbled up, but there it is in estrogen. ST. Yeah. So those are steroids. I bet you've heard of steroids. I bet you heard of it.
I've seen them walking too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Here's the cool thing. For every hormone on this sheet, you have to know if it's a steroid or not. Really? You kidding me? Here's how easy it is. Steroids only come from 2 places in the whole body. There's one, because we don't have both. So either you have ovaries or testes, they come from there, and one other place. By the way, we can call these things collectively, the ovaries and the testes. You probably heard them called this. Gonads. That's technical, that's a medical term, okay? So the gonads, the ovaries and the testes.
Ovaries are gonads too?
Yes, yes. Ovaries and testes. Now you're going to see why I do things like I do. Tell me what this is right here.
Cortex.
Cortex of what?
Adrenal gland.
There's your other steroids. All steroids, every steroid comes from either the adrenal cortex or your gonads, ovaries and testes. That's it. So you don't have to memorize every hormone. Is it a steroid? Is it a not? I don't know. All you have to know, eventually you will. Right now we don't have a clue. We haven't even talked about them. But there's 3 hormones from up there, the adrenal cortex. Those make steroids. Those are steroids. And then there's estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone from your reproductive organs, from your ovaries and your testes. Every other hormone is a non-steroid, okay? I don't do anything with steroids and non-steroids in lab, and I'll even tell you, I'm not even going to ask you about steroids in lab at all. But I know it's a big part of the lectures that you're going to be doing, so I wanted to lay a foundation for it. So when you get to the lectures and you hear all this about steroids and non, you immediately have a hook. Oh yeah, they only come from 2 places. And many of their names sound the same. Stare, they have that stare in them. How about this one called aldosterone?
Yes.
Aha! How about cortisone? Zone, own, Sadly, they call it cortisol when it's a hormone. So we'll have to learn that. But anyway, yeah, stress, exactly. Steroids are stress. Reproductive stress. Snag your picture. How many pictures we got so far? 5? Some people go 4. And also this first endocrine, I feel like I have to go slow. I could go fast. I could spit stuff out at y'all faster than I go. But we're laying the foundation for how the whole system works. Today, my goal is only to get through the first one, the pituitary. So we're learning where they are in the body. We're learning facts about them. And then we're really going to look at the pituitary and understand it. Because the beauty of that is when you know how they work, then we just learn different ones in different places kind of work the same and follow patterns. And then we're just adding new information to a pattern that we already understand. Okay. So we'll go up in the body to the chest and the neck. Right here. I'm guessing somebody in this room already knows what this butterfly-shaped one in your neck is. Very good. By the way, I draw D's funny in here. I used to put a stick on them. This pen and that projector don't like me to bring the D back down. It freaks it out. So I teach in this room so much that I draw my D's like that. It got so bad that now in my real life, that's how I draw D's. Such is life, okay? Hey, anybody know what the thyroid regulates?
T3.
Ooh, cool. Cool. Yeah, there's a word I'm looking for. And T3 and T4 are the hormones. And so the T3 and T4, when you have a blood test, you may have heard of T3 and T4 in the blood before. It measures those. But the thyroid itself, it uses hormones to determine your metabolism. And I don't know if you remember, remember what I don't know if I told you, maybe I did. Anything you need from AMP1 that I need to make sure you know, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to assume you remember it for AMP1. Remember how we did a capillary? And in your brain, you're probably going, oh, yeah, I heard a capillary with simple squamous way back when. I taught it to you again because I don't expect you to remember it from AMP1. You had AMP1 real quick. So metabolism is the total of all of your chemical reactions in the body. That's what your metabolism really is. If you have a lot of chemical reactions, making a lot of energy, versus if you have fewer chemical reactions, not as much energy, your thyroid can speed your body up or it can slow your body down. If your thyroid's slow, you're going to be tired and you're probably going to gain weight. If your thyroid's really fast, you probably have a lot of energy and you're probably going to be thinner. It doesn't mean that all weight issues are because of that. It can be how other things go as well, but it's an important factor. Okay. The other thing, look at your handout because we're learning about the handout. Go down to thyroid, bottom of page 1. Not quite the bottom, but almost the bottom. And what you're going to see is that you'll see a place where it says T3 and T4. And if you ever have a blood test to test thyroid function, you'll actually see them called T3 and T4 on the test usually. And I wanted to start letting you call them that, but there's this weird thing called Blackboard Ultra that we use, and Blackboard Ultra is super glitchy right now from a teacher standpoint. Here's what I mean. I have all these tests already pre-built. I built all the pools. We took years to fine-tune the pools and so forth. We put in an Ultra, and every once in a while we go, oh yeah, I want to tweak that question. Ultra is not letting us do that. It'll let us do it. It'll let us save it. It'll look like it saved it. And then we open it up a week later and all the saved changes go away. That's on our quizzes and our tests. So I'm just going to tell you, I know that there's some things I don't care about so much anymore, but because I can't edit the tests, they're on the test. So I need to teach you. And that one of those things is this. You need to know the official name of T3 and T4. They're on your sheet. Okay? I'll say it for you. Look at T3. T3 is called tri. That's where the 3 comes from. Tri means 3. Iodo. That means iodine molecules. You might remember iodine. It's in your salt. Unless you use Himalayan salt and sea salt, it's not in that necessarily. It could be, but it's not necessarily to the same amount. That's interesting. So T3, triiodothyronine. It's just telling you it's from the thyroid. T4, you got the simple name there, but let me just tell you, it's also iodothyronine, but its prefix means 4. So its alternate name is tetraiodothyronine. I'm not telling you you have to have that, but I'm telling you if you're already learning triiodothyronine, it's not so hard to learn tetraiodothyronine for T4. But the reality is most people call T4 thyroxine. They call it thyroxine. Okay, so these are the 2 major thyroid hormones. Gotta love that. We call the thyroid hormones thyroid hormones. There's 2 of them, T3 and T4. Okay, the reason I told you the names is I know there's a question on the test that says, what's the technical name of T4? And it's in a pool. I'm not saying you're going to get it, but you might. And I'm going to go ahead and count it. So go ahead and learn it. Okay. There's also one for T3. All right. Anybody know what those little ones are called? Those are the parathyroid glands. Para means surrounding. They're not inside the thyroid, they're outside. And here's the crazy thing. The picture is lying to you.
Yeah, it is.
They are always posterior. What's posterior mean?
To the back.
To the back. Very good. They're on the back side of the thyroid. They're not on the front. And by the way, the thyroid is just under your skin here. If you have a problem with the thyroid and it's bulging out, you see it through the skin. Sometimes people get diagnosed with thyroid cancer because somebody notices, hey, you got a lump over here. Go get that checked. Good news, thyroid cancer is one of the most curable cancers there is, okay? Especially nowadays. They treat it really, really well. You'll have problems, but most people survive, okay? Parathyroids, if they had a problem and overgrew, you wouldn't see it because they're hidden on the back, okay? We'll talk about these later on. I just needed you to see them to be able to label them. The other thing we have here in the chest, right? You have your sternum right here. It's actually behind the bone. It's just above your heart, so it's right in here. It is called thymus. So notice, those are very different, but they start out the same. And on this picture, they look like they're close together. They're really not. One's in your chest and one's up here in your neck. Okay? One's hidden by bones, the other's just barely under the skin. So what we want you to know about the thymus, you can see on page 2. I'm going to say it for you, but if you want to look at your handout, page 2, a little past halfway down, the thymus gland is part of your immune system. And it has one major job. There's other jobs. All of these glands do other things I'm not telling you about. But the major job of the thymus is that's where some of your white blood cells mature. The ones that mature in the thymus we call T cells. Oh, they mature in the thymus with a T. We call them T cells. On your handout, you don't see T cells mature, though. You see the most fancy way on the planet we could say mature, and that is they develop immunocompetence. So I'll just let you know on the lab test, if you want to, if I ask you what the hormones from the thymus do, you can say help T cells mature or mature T cells. But on the lecture test, I bet my question has that fancy wording. I bet it says immunocompetence. Okay, so keep that in mind. I like you to know big words, but I also like you to know what it really means, because we're not just always floating around big words. Okay. By the way, the name of the hormones from the thymus, if you saw this as multiple choice, I don't think you'd ever miss it, because it just looks too much like it, right? They're called thymosins. It's kind of a generic name. They had some other ones that used to be called thymopoietins. Not really that big a deal. You should be able to recognize it for a lecture test, and it's pretty easy to recognize. And what do the thymosins or the thymus do?
Mature T cells.
Matures T cells. There you go. Matures T cells. Okay, there's your picture. It is complete. You'll also notice then how we are getting you accustomed to this sheet is I've been bouncing around. When you get a sheet like this, if you were told nothing but to learn this, you would start at the top and you would go in order and you would try to learn. The best way to learn things is out of order. Get a concept, understand a concept, and use it in a few places. By doing this, we're actually locking in our concepts while we're learning new information. So I also like for everybody to understand that the way that I teach class is kind of modeling the way you can study. When you get classes later on in healthcare in your program, don't always study your notes just in perfect order. Move around and look at this and lock it in and then go over here, because sometimes when we just go straight, your brain shuts down and you quit learning at a certain point. So by doing it this way and changing the picture and moving somewhere else and looking at something else, your brain gets to take little bitty breaks while we're even working. I know it's weird, but that's just kind of, it's fascinating how that works. Okay, the last picture or part of this picture is way up high, and it is not good. It is too little. So here's what we did. We took a picture from A&P1 of the brain. You guys know that's the brain area. You might not remember what all those parts are called. Then you'd have the big part, the cerebrum up here. So we snagged this one. I'll zoom it down. I'm guessing that you remember that picture. But I'm guessing that you probably can't label much on it. Let me see. Oh, just kidding. This little one back here, it is at the back. That's the back. This was the cerebellum. That's the occipital lobe. So cerebellum, occipital lobe. I'm not going to ask you on the test. But that little guy right above there, they were dissecting brains, and they looked up in there and peeled that stuff away and saw that little thing sticking out, and somebody thought it was shaped like a pine cone. You've seen pine cones on the ground, right? They're fat at one end and taper down to a tip. So they said, ha, it looks like a pine. So look what they named it. Here's how we pronounce it usually, pineal, because it means pine-like. It's my first joke to y'all. If you say pineal, you think it looks like something else. Just saying. So it's pineal. That's why I enunciate it like that, to help you remember it looks like a pine cone. Pineal. And that's why they gave it that name, because it means pine-like. Okay? You already know the hormone, because it's rushing through our bodies because it's dark. Name the hormone.
Melatonin.
There you go. I know you don't all know it, but I knew someone would, because we mentioned it earlier. Oops. Melatonin. Melatonin. Melatonin helps to make you sleepy when it's dark. Okay? Notice I'm purposefully not saying at night. Because sometimes at night it's dark, and sometimes at night it's dark, and we're on our phone, and it's bright light in our face, and that fights your melatonin. That messes up your day and night cycles. Laptops late at night, any of the screens, they emit blue light. I don't know if you know this, and it messes with your circadian rhythms, and it messes with your hormones. And the good news is when you're young, you can usually sleep really well, and it don't matter. You think it doesn't matter. But more screen time we have, and the less that we're actually outside during the morning, it messes with some of our day and night cycles. So here's the most basics. Melatonin makes you sleepy at night, and when the sun comes up in the morning, it shuts off your melatonin. So your melatonin goes down, and you wake up. Or you get more awake, you get more energy. So when you live in West Texas and you got a gray, cloudy day like this, and especially 2 of them, oh my God, or 3? Remind me, how tired were you today? Who was not tired? Who was fully energized? What's wrong with you? No.
Melatonin.
So there you go. A lot of people, a lot more people, people are chronically tired anyway, but when it gets dark in West Texas during the day, a lot more people are tired. And that's one of the reasons. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons. So you got to know, it makes you sleepy when it's dark, and it helps you wake up when it's bright. Okay? Next thing. So I might ask you that gland or that hormone from this picture. Here's the pituitary, right there. That's where the pituitary is. Okay? We're going to look at the pituitary on a better picture in just a little bit. Pituitary has 2 parts. You might remember this from earlier. Has an anterior and a posterior pituitary. We'll see that in a little bit. There's another one right here that is responsible for controlling the pituitary. This one's very important, but it's not even on your sheet. It's called the hypothalamus. So it's an area of the brain. It is a gland. We probably wouldn't call it an organ because it's within it. It's a part of an organ. It's part of your brain. It's that region of the brain. But anyway, as a gland, we call it the hypothalamus. Okay? Remember, what does it control? The pituitary. It controls the gland right under it. Let me wash your melatonin away. It doesn't work that fast. Sorry. I wish it did. So the hypothalamus controls the pituitary. In the lecture, you might notice a question that asks, what gland is the master gland? The hypothalamus is considered the master gland. Yeah, of course, they named it that like 100 years ago, right? Not quite, back in the 60s, maybe the 70s, because they didn't even know it made any hormones until the 60s or 70s, the hypothalamus. They didn't know that, okay? And then they found out it did. They used to think the pituitary was the main controller, and they realized, oh, this one controls that, so we're going to change its name, and we're going to say it's that. So if you're asked, I know there's a question that shows up on your pools and on the practice quizzes. It ain't the pituitary. The master gland is what? Hypothalamus. There you go. The hypo. Yep, hype you up. All right, picture time. Could say sleepy time. Now you know if you were ever in the hall and saw my class in here in the dark, now you know why we're taking pictures. So here's that other picture that I mentioned, that I zoomed way up on.
It looks like
I know, like what?
garlic.
Oh, garlic. At least you didn't say test.
No, that's for the next.
Because that's what most people say.
I'm thinking about food.
You and me both, I'm starving. There's the anterior and there's the posterior. Anterior and posterior are what? Pituitary. And so, those are the two regions, the anterior and posterior pituitary. So of that one major gland, it has two parts or two regions, anterior and posterior. Now, I'm going to draw something up there and then erase it, okay? I want to remind you that this is what neurons can look like. You remember that? Neurons are long cells. And when we see them in A&P books, they're always yellow. How cool is that? Look, there they are. So if you wanted the picture just of the neuron part with this, neuron's going to go away. Everything else is going to stay. But if you wanted to see the neuron, get it. If you don't need to see it, if you write it, that's fine too. Okay? But I needed you to know that these cells are neurons. And those yellow cells are neurons. And that's telling us that the posterior pituitary is made from neurons. So in AMP2, it's where we really get you to understand tissues. In AMP1, you've got all the tissues all at one time in one chapter, and you memorize them for a test, and they're all jumbled up, and you're like, what? In AMP2, we do tissues as we see them in certain body parts, and we reinforce it. So we're going to talk about simple squamous with capillaries and something else later. We're going to talk about what glands are commonly made of. And then we're going to do the rule breaker. And the rule breaker is the posterior pituitary. It is an oddball because it is made, you already know it's neurons. So what if I asked you what kind of tissue? I'm fine with that. It's nervous tissue. The posterior pituitary is nervous tissue. And that's why we have this great picture that shows the neurons. But that's the rule breaker. We're not going to be talking about any other glands that are nervous tissue. There's one other, there's other ones. We're not really going to talk about them like that because the other ones are up in the brain. The hypothalamus, the pineal gland, and there's one out in the body that for us right now is not important. But almost all normal glands aren't made of that. Normal glands, tell me what kind of cells I'm drawing. These look like little 3D squares. You're so close because AMP1 misled you. It didn't. I'm just kidding. When we do the endocrine system, this is just a whole bunch of cells. They're not layered. It's not stacked in layers. So it's just a mass. So we don't have to say it had so many layers. We can just drop the first name, which I know you're not used to doing from AMP1. You had to say simple cuboidal, or you didn't learn stratified cuboidal, but if you did, you would have called it that, okay? We just say it's cuboidal epithelium. That's what it is, cuboidal epithelium. Most of our glands we will see will be that tissue. Most glands are made from cuboidal epithelium. That means little square, three-dimensional epithelial cells. And they're perfect little cells for making things and secreting them. So that's why the body uses them for glands. So if you're asked, what tissue type is the anterior pituitary, what's your answer going to be?
Cuboidal.
Anterior.
Cuboidal.
Give me both names.
Epithelium.
Yep, to get it right, you have to have both names, right? Because there's no tissue that's just called cuboidal. So we'll say it again. Anterior pituitary is what tissue?
Cuboidal epithelium.
Perfect. Cuboidal epithelium. Many of our glands, when we come back next week and do the rest of the glands, we're going to see a lot of cuboidal epithelium. Okay? All right. What kind of tissue is this?
Nervous.
Nervous. Look how easy it is. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue. What two hormones do you see listed here for the posterior pituitary on your handout?
Oxytocin.
So for right now, I'm going to abbreviate ADH. Next week, I'll go into it. We just don't have much time right now as I'm wrapping this up. But I need you to know something about these two hormones. Because remember what I said about the posterior, it's the rule breaker. And it really is. It breaks more than one rule. Not only is it a different tissue type, but it is the only gland that we will study that does not make hormones. It doesn't make anything. So look what I'm going to write. ADH and oxytocin are made up there. Hey, who remembers? What was the gland that controlled the pituitary?
Hypothalamus.
There it is, right up there. There it is, right up there. That's the hypothalamus. So ADH and oxytocin are made in the hypothalamus. They're just, this is where they are released and get into the, see, they drew them already there, but I wanted to draw my little capillary so you can see that. Okay, that's where they get into the blood, but they're made way up there. So why I picked this up, here's what I would do so you always have this on the handout. On page 1, if you turn it this way, where it says posterior pituitary, right in that margin where it says ADH and oxytocin, I would write made in hypothalamus. ADH made in hypothalamus. Because that's different. Every other hormone on here, where it's listed, it is not only made there, but it's released there. So it's the same. There's no difference. This is the only set that there's a difference. The next thing I'll say, which is kind of fun, how many hormones does the anterior pituitary produce?
6.
So I gave you that number for a reason, right? To help you remember that, this is how I usually draw it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I put 6 little arrows. I put those other 2 arrows far away because they're different. They're made there, but they're a little different. We're going to group them together. So there's 6 hormones made there. Go ahead and snag your picture, and I want to make some room so I can help you learn the names of those 6 hormones. So I'll just tell you, probably I'm going to go over a couple of minutes because I piddled too much with your intro orientation. If you need to go, it is a-okay. Remember, I'm recording this. I'll upload it later. You can watch the last 5 minutes if you need. Who can remind me, what kind of cells, what kind of tissue should I put in here?
Cuboidal epithelium.
Very good. So I'm just going to write a few cuboidal cells, just to remind you, because we already see the neurons on the other side. What would AP stand for?
Anterior pituitary.
Very good. Look how much fun we can have there. Okay, there's the posterior pituitary. How many hormones do I need to put here?
6, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 5 and 6, if you look to your sheet, are going to be F, S, H, and LH. And yeah, I'm just abbreviating up here. Remember, we're going to learn the names. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone, and LH stands for luteinizing hormone. Weird pronunciation, luteinizing hormone. Here's the cool thing. Both of these target, you can look on your sheet, what does FSH and LH target?
Ovaries and testes.
Ovaries and testes, which are called?
Gonads.
The gonads. So I'm writing a word on purpose. Anything that is called tropic or tropin related to hormones. And you're going to see this in the lectures, and as we do more of these words, as we move on, you're going to see some things like for this, gonadotropins. Anytime you see tropin, tropin is telling you that whatever hormone we're talking about, its job is to cause the release of a different hormone. So sometimes the body works. One hormone's job is to go somewhere else and tell another hormone to get released. It's like a chain reaction. One of the scientific ways they have a secret language is they call them tropins. If a hormone's a tropic hormone, it causes the release of another hormone. It controls and regulates other hormones. Okay? FSH and LH target what body parts?
Gonads.
Ovaries and testes, gonads. So they're referred to as the gonadotropins. They regulate the gonads and the release of their hormones. Well, that's the hardest. We got that out of the way. So look, let's go easy. First one's called growth hormone. Anybody remember what I said you could say on the lab test for what it does? A growth. Yeah, it helps you grow. That doesn't just mean your whole body, it means your cells, it means healing and repairing too. Have you ever heard that you heal and repair at night? So when you're asleep, your growth hormone goes up to help your body. That's natural. Here's what I want you to do though. Look on the sheet, page 1, first hormone. Does it say growth on the functions? No, it says all this technical stuff. Let me tell you, there's layers to our learning. In lab, if I ask you what growth hormone says, certainly you can put anything on the handout, but you can say growth because that's our first step in learning. This is our first time to learn growth hormone. So for lab, you can put, what does it do? It helps with growth. Fine. In lecture's going to get more detailed and tell you, how does it help with growth? By doing these detailed things within cells. That's how it helps cells grow and repair, okay? And changes things in your body. The next one I want to do is TSH. Remember, we're not doing everything with these. I'm just cleaning it up at the end so you have some understanding. Look at the name, thyroid what hormone?
Stimulating.
Take a wild guess what gland it stimulates.
The thyroid.
The thyroid. So what would a good target of thyroid stimulating hormone be? The thyroid. Go ahead and look at your page. Find it. TSH targets the thyroid. Now remember what we said. Where do all hormones travel? Through the blood. And where's that blood go? So TSH doesn't go only to the thyroid. It goes to your big toe. Your big toe ignores it though. It doesn't have receptors. The receptors are in the thyroid. So it targets the thyroid. Make sure and put on both pages. The target is where the receptors are. We don't want to forget that. Because it's real easy. Say it once at the first, 2 hours later say it again. If we don't say it again, we forget. If we don't look at our notes and see it. Okay? Next one. I'm going to go out of my order, and I'm going to do this because it's so easy. PRL stands for prolactin. Lactin sounds like lactose or lactate. What's that all about?
Milk.
Milk. Who's more likely to make milk? Me? Or you guys in the middle?
Women.
Yeah. See, we're kind of segregated. Join us over here. No. Anyway, okay. So women are prolactin. Men have it too. I can already tell I'm going to like y'all. You know what too much prolactin does in males? Judith, close your eyes. No, I'm just kidding. Ready? Did you get it? That's what it does. Too much prolactin in males? Know this, only that. Okay? That's what it does. So I say that to make your brain go, what? That's the milk maker, but guys have it? Absolutely. And it does good stuff for guys. If it's out of whack, it messes us up. If it's out of whack, it messes y'all up too. But this is a good point to say. Every hormone that we do, both genders, have estrogen. Y'all have testosterone. We just have them in different amounts. And we have some differences in our receptors and other things potentially that cause them to express different in our genetics. But it's a very important concept that we use the same hormones for stuff. It's pretty cool, at least as far as what we're teaching. The last one is the hardest. That's what I saved it for last. ACTH. But that's why I did this for you earlier. Tell me what this was. And that is the what? Cortex. Look at this. Take a wild guess what AC stands for. Adrenal cortex. And tell me, what do all tropic hormones do? Cause the release of a second hormone. So right now, you know a hormone called, with the biggest, longest name, the scariest one, adrenocorticotropic hormone, targets the adrenal cortex and tells it to release its hormone. By the way, my handout gets very specific and lets you know the hormone it releases is called cortisol. Okay? It releases cortisol, not necessarily the others. There's others from there, but it likes to more significantly release cortisol. And as we mentioned earlier, cortisol, I didn't mention it, stress, right? So this is related to stress too. Test ain't going to be stressful. Get your picture. Lab test is going to feel just like you're in class. You're going to hear my little, oh, what was that he said?
Rewind.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I have to introduce this. If you got to leave, that's okay. All right, but make sure to leave your card here. Your card is your attendance. Okay, but I do want, and this will be in the video, but I want to do our first slide picture to help break it down. Okay, so this is the pituitary. How many regions in a pituitary? Yeah, go ahead and look at your notes. It's okay. Look at pictures, whatever. Two. One of them is called the anterior, and one of them is called the posterior. Wouldn't it be cool if we had, oh man, if we had, it should reset it where it is. There. Bless you. If we had a memory device that could tell us which one was anterior and which one was posterior, the one that looks dark is anterior, and the one that looks pale. So those are regions. Those are the major regions. Anterior and posterior. Now keep in mind, when you take a test, you're going to see some pictures, lots of pictures. A picture and a pointer isn't complete. I have to ask a question. So always when you take this test and you're looking at these pictures, remember, I could point here and just say, what gland is this? Pituitary. I could point here and say, what region is this? Anterior pituitary. I could point here and say, name a hormone produced here. Prolactin. Name a different one. Say growth, it's easiest.
Just remember, one of the six.
Right, one of the six, one of the six, one of the six. Okay? See what I mean? Is we can have one pointer in lots of different questions. You have to read the question when you're taking the test. That's what you have to look at the picture, look at the pointer, read the question. Okay? What kind of tissue is this? Aha. What kind of tissue is this? Look how I'm going to abbreviate it. Sorry, that E's too ugly. There we go. Cuboidal epi. Cuboidal epithelium. Cuboidal epithelium. Watch, I'm going to prove it to you. See, this is things when we teach a long time, we forget this. I try never to forget these basics. It's so silly, but you maybe never been told. Cuboidal cells almost always have a round nucleus. I wish they would have named them different. The cell, you don't see the cube anywhere. But what you do see, look at how round most of these nuclei are. So when you're looking at a tissue and you're seeing a bunch of little round black dots, those are inside of cuboidal cells. See, look up here. Most of these aren't round. You're seeing a few that are round. Most of them aren't round. Why is that? This, I don't know if you remember. Remember I drew the neuron? I had the cell body way up high and the axon went down to the posterior pituitary. So honestly, while this is nervous tissue, it's not the whole neuron. It doesn't even have the fat part of the neuron. It just has the little tail, which has no nucleus. So all this pink stuff you're seeing, those are just axons where the information's just traveling, if you remember that from A&P1. But either way, all of that's not relevant. I'm just going to ask you the tissue type. Okay? Nervous tissue. What's this tissue? Cuboidal epithelium. How many hormones made here?
6.
So let's do it so it stands out when we see it against that. 6. Tell me what you know about the posterior and hormone production.
It comes from the hypothalamus.
It's not helping me. Right? It doesn't make anything. We feel that it's very important that you understand the posterior pituitary is the only gland we teach you that doesn't make a single thing. Okay? Nothing. Doesn't make nothing. There are questions on the lab test and the lecture test. In the lab, here's how it might go. Pointer. Right in the middle of the posterior pituitary. Ready for the question? Name a hormone produced here. None. Nothing. Nada. Zip, zilch, zero. Get the idea? We want you to know it so well. And don't worry, next week on Monday when you get, or Tuesday when you get me back, I'll quiz you on that and remind you on that. And I'm sure that half the class will say, name a hormone produced here. ADH. Name a hormone produced, oxytocin. Because we looked at the sheet, right? Oxytocin and ADH are released from there. That's where they go in the blood. But where were they made? Hypothalamus. Okay. All right. I'll let you go. I'll kill the recording. Thanks for coming today. Remember, oh yeah, get your last picture. Remember, you got homework to organize your mind for the class. OC contract, first day assignment, biography, learn anything, and your cute little navigation assignment. All together, all 5 of those should not even take an hour. Okay? Honestly, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 7 minutes if you lost your picture and don't know where to upload it from the biography. So they don't take long. All right, bye y'all. Remember, leave your card because that's the roll sheet.